First story. My husband was sick and hated my son. So I sold my husband's car and gave the money to my son so he can live a comfortable life, as my husband may never walk out of the hospital again. Now my entitled husband canceled my POA on him, divorced me, and allowed his daughter as his POA. My accounts are frozen, everyone abandoned me, and I'm regretting my actions. I 45F have been married to my husband 48M for just over 10 years. We both came into the marriage with one child each. He doesn't have a relationship with his daughter from his first marriage. Long story. Not really relevant, but I've always been really close with my son 19M, whom my husband helped raise since he was about 9. My husband's always treated my son okay. Not great, not bad, just politely distant, if I'm honest. He's one of those old school, teach responsibility through struggle people. Not abusive, but definitely the kind of man who thinks kids these days are coddled. We've had many arguments over the years about that. I've always tried to be more emotionally available for my son. Things got a lot more tense 5 years ago, when my husband's health started failing. He was diagnosed with a degenerative neurological condition that's hard to manage and even harder to predict. He had some pretty rough months: confusion, emotional outbursts. One even bad enough that we had to call an ambulance because he was shaking and couldn't get his words out. That scared both of us. With all this going on, he made the decision to sign over power of attorney to me. His words at the time were, "Just in case I lose control or I'm not here." I took that seriously. He didn't want his medical decisions or finances falling into disarray if things got worse. Around the same time, our son was applying to college. He got into a few great state schools with solid programs. One of them even offered almost a full ride. But he really wanted to attend a private university that he felt gave him the best chance at a high-paying career. We weren't thrilled about the cost, but he applied for aid and got a 50% scholarship. We agreed to help cover the rest. Here's where things started to crack between me and my husband. He made it very clear that he wouldn't be footing any more of the bill than that. No room and board, no extras. He felt my son needed to learn to own his choices and take out loans or work. I understood his logic, but it rubbed me the wrong way that he seemed almost eager for my son to struggle. So my son moved out and sublet a small off-campus room. We gave him enough for the first month's rent and security deposit, and after that, he was on his own. He picked up a job in the dining hall food service, cleaning, the usual, and almost immediately started struggling. He called me several times that first month, overwhelmed and exhausted. He said he felt humiliated serving his classmates food, and it was interfering with his studies. My husband's response: "Good, he's learning." I can't even count the number of times we fought about it. I told him my son was breaking under the pressure, and he basically said that was the point. That kind of tough love might have worked in his day, but I wasn't about to watch my son spiral just to make a point. So yeah, I sent my son extra money. It wasn't a huge amount, just enough to make up what he couldn't cover after quitting the dining hall job halfway through the semester. My husband found out and got angry, accusing me of being manipulative and undoing everything he was trying to teach. Then came the holidays. By that point, my son had come back home for his second and third semesters because he couldn't afford housing. He was still doing well in school, better, honestly, without the stress of holding a job. But of course, my husband couldn't let that slide. He'd make passive comments like, "Must be nice to live off other people's work," or, "Back in my day, we paid our own way, or we didn't go." In late spring, my son got a job at the campus bookstore. It seemed less demeaning than food service, and I figured it would be manageable. But by week 2, he started calling again, same story. His supervisor was condescending. He was mopping floors, and worst of all, classmates would walk in and see him cleaning. He said it made him feel invisible and worthless, like no matter how smart he was, he'd always be the help. He begged me to help just for one more semester. He said he was interviewing for internships in finance and consulting, which would pay enough to make him independent. He told me that the only reason he was working so hard in school was to never have to take another degrading job again. I took him seriously. I know some people will say I'm overprotective or enabling, but if you heard the way he talked about how small he felt like he'd never catch up to the kids born into wealth, you'd understand. I know what it's like to have to scrap for everything while people look down on you. I didn't want that for him. So I looked at our finances. And honestly, things are tight. Medical bills are still coming in, even with insurance. We tapped out most of our savings just to stay afloat. Then I remembered my husband's car. It's been sitting unused in the garage for almost a year. He hasn't driven it since being admitted. He hasn't even asked about it. I debated it for weeks. I even called the facility he's in to ask if he'd need transportation if he were discharged. The answer was vague. It depends on his recovery, and some patients don't regain enough coordination. That's not a no, but it wasn't a yes either. So I made the call. I had legal power of attorney. I had full rights to handle his assets in his absence. And this, to me, felt like a worthy use and investment into his stepson's future. Not a splurge, not a vacation, but a semester of housing and dignity for a young man trying to build a future. I finalized the sale last Sunday. Got a fair price. I used most of the money to secure an apartment for my son near campus and loaded a prepaid card for his groceries and transportation. I kept some aside for emergencies and deposited a small portion into our joint account just to avoid red flags. Then, yesterday, my husband called. It was the first clear conversation we've had in over a month. He caught me off guard. Normally when he calls, he's confused or tired or barely talks at all. This time he was sharp, calm voice, but I knew what was coming. He asked how things were going. I gave him a general update. Then I told him the truth. I said I had sold his car and that the money went towards our son's rent and expenses for the next semester. I said it was the only viable asset that wasn't actively in use. He didn't say anything for a second. Then came the accusations. You stole from me. You had no right. You just gave away something that belonged to me. I reminded him I had power of attorney. That the car was under his name, yes, but I had legal authority to make financial decisions on his behalf. He didn't care. He said I twisted that power into an excuse to prioritize my son over him again. That I've always done this. That he should have expected it. He said it wasn't about legality. It was about respect. That I made a decision that directly affected him without even trying to ask. I told him he hadn't asked about the car once in 10 months. He said that didn't matter, he was still alive, still aware. And I sold something that wasn't mine to give away. He hung up on me. He hasn't called back. The facility won't let me speak to him unless he initiates it. I've texted. No response. Here's the thing. I know exactly how this looks to him and to some of you. But this isn't a normal situation. He's been checked out for months. I don't mean that cruelly, he's sick. But I've been the one handling everything. Bills, insurance, groceries, appointments, our house, our son. He didn't even ask where the car was until now. And yes, I chose my son. Because I've had to. My husband made it clear years ago that my son wasn't his responsibility beyond the basics. I've always been the one putting in the emotional labor, the financial backup, and the damage control. So if I used a car that was collecting dust to give my son the chance to finish a hard semester in peace, I don't feel like I betrayed anyone. I did what I thought was best with the tools I had. People will say I crossed a line, that I should have waited, that I should have gotten written permission or tried harder to get his consent. But realistically, I don't know when he's coming home. If he's coming home, he has good days and terrible ones. He doesn't even remember things sometimes. We had a call in September where he forgot what year it was. And about my son, I get it. Some people will say he's entitled. That he should just suck it up and work. But he did work. He hated it. It crushed him. And maybe I'm soft, maybe I'm enabling, but I'd rather help him now than watch him burn out. One semester. One more push. He says he's lined up interviews that'll make him self-sufficient by spring. Also, let's not act like my husband is neutral in all this. He's never supported my son emotionally. They barely talk unless forced. When my son was in high school and had a panic attack before finals, my husband told him to walk it off. When he broke up with his girlfriend and was depressed for weeks, my husband said, better now than later. There's no warmth there, just obligation. So yeah, I've always filled that gap, and I won't apologize for that. I didn't buy myself a new wardrobe. I didn't go on vacation. I sold a car that had been untouched for almost a year and put the money into our son's education and stability. And before anyone suggests I should have made my son take out loans, we talked about that. He qualifies for federal loans, but the idea of graduating with $40,000 plus debt when he has a chance at earning real income next year felt like the wrong move. He's trying to avoid that trap. I think that's smart. I'm not going to punish him for thinking ahead. I don't expect my husband to forgive this anytime soon. He feels betrayed. But I also feel like he gave up his say when he stepped out of the world and left me holding the bag on everything. So yeah, maybe I'm the arsehole here, but I don't regret it. My son has housing, he can focus, and I have one less thing to stress about. I'm not going to feel guilty for trying to keep this family from falling apart. Ada? Comments. Comment 1. What strikes me most isn't the car, it's the pattern. You've been overriding your husband on everything when it comes to your son and justifying it because you believe you're right. This isn't about legal rights. It's about respect and boundaries. The car was just the final straw. You married a man who didn't want to be a father figure beyond the basics. That's cool, sure, but it sounds like he was honest about it. You signed up anyway, and now you're mad he didn't magically become a doting stepdad. That's on you. You talk about your son's dignity like working part-time in college is some cruel punishment. Millions of kids do it. My daughter works 20 hours a week and still pulls a 3.8 GPA. Your husband is sick, vulnerable, and you used that moment to take something of his and funnel it to a kid he never really bonded with. You used your legal authority like a weapon. Comment 2. The part that floors me is that your son isn't even in crisis. He's just annoyed that minimum wage work doesn't stroke his ego. You say he's humiliated. Good. That's a healthy motivator. Lots of kids work crap jobs and figure it out. Your kid cries about mopping floors like it's a human rights violation. And instead of helping him toughen up, you got your husband's personal property without consent. He's sick, not dead. And you took full advantage of that, not just legally, but emotionally. You told yourself it was justified because your husband checked out. No, you chose not to respect him the second he wasn't able to argue back. Also, your husband wasn't a deadbeat, he was setting boundaries. He offered tuition support. That's huge. He didn't owe your son anything beyond that. You just didn't like the answer. So you waited until he was too weak to stop you and did what you wanted. YTA. Comment 3. You weren't acting in your husband's best interests, you were acting in your son's. Those aren't the same. You were already told where your husband stood on this. He was explicit. You knew his boundaries. He didn't want to fund your son's lifestyle. And you ignored that the second it got uncomfortable. You had the legal power, sure, but you abused the spirit of that agreement. That wasn't your car. And your son isn't entitled to comfort at someone else's expense, especially not someone who's literally incapacitated and unable to protect himself. You didn't just sell a vehicle. You violated your husband's trust when he had no ability to stop you. The legal consequences are one thing, but morally, you're so far out of line it's insane. This wasn't an emergency. Your son's just too proud to do a job he thinks is beneath him. That's not a crisis. That's a spoiled kid with no grip on the real world. You are failing your son, and you already failed your husband. Enjoy the wreckage you created. Update. I honestly wasn't going to come back here because the comments last time were vicious. People acted like I'm some monster who deliberately preyed on a sick man. Like I sat here rubbing my hands, waiting for him to lose his mobility so I could sell his damn car. That is not what happened, and I will not accept that narrative. I have spent years doing everything. Keeping this house running, managing every bill, being the emotional parent, showing up. I have carried this family on my back. And the second I made one decision that prioritized my son's well-being, everyone rushed to call me a thief and an abuser. But since things escalated, and apparently this situation is interesting enough to be everyone's entertainment, here's the update. After my husband hung up on me, I tried to call the facility multiple times. They told me they couldn't connect us unless he asked. Fine. I figured he'd calm down. He didn't. What I didn't know was that his sister had been calling him too. And at some point he told her what happened. So now she's involved. She has always hated me and always acted like my son was some intruder in their family. She never saw him as someone who belonged. She showed up at the facility the next week asking to see him. I didn't know at first. I only found out after I got a call from the care coordinator telling me that his sister was requesting to discuss care authority and decision-making boundaries. I tried to prevent the visit. And before everyone freaks out, I didn't do it to hide. I did it because last time she visited him, she agitated him, and he had a breakdown that took days to stabilize. I told the facility that. I told them he needed peace. I told them he didn't want her there. They asked if he had explicitly said that. I said yes, and at the time, I believed it. But apparently he told her the opposite. So now I look like a liar. And of course, she didn't come alone. She brought his daughter, the one he hasn't talked to in years, and a literal attorney. They sat with him and pressured him to talk about his finances, about me, about the car. And now we are having a competency evaluation hearing to determine whether I should continue holding POA. Yes, they are trying to strip power of attorney from me. Meanwhile, everything at home is falling apart. My son found out. He broke down crying, uncontrollable, shaking, sobbing. He said he feels like everyone wants him to fail, that he's already behind, that people will never let him forget where he started. He asked me, "Why does everyone think I don't deserve to study without being humiliated?" And that's when it hit me. I am literally the only person who has ever defended him. His father left us when he was 6. My husband always kept him at arm's length. The world has always acted like he should just be tougher, harder, and less emotional. And everyone here proved it again. People practically celebrated the idea of him being forced into SHTTY jobs just to learn humility. When he cried, my husband's sister sat there stone-faced, like he was putting on a show. She looked at him like he was weak. And then she turned to me and said, "This is exactly why he needs to learn to live in reality." No. I will not apologize for shielding my child from cruelty disguised as life lessons. But the fallout keeps coming. Because of the legal challenge, our joint bank account has been frozen pending review. My credit card declined when I tried to pick up prescriptions. I had to call the bank and sit on hold for an hour, just to be told they can't release funds until the POA dispute is resolved. I had to borrow money from my sister to get groceries. The facility has limited my access to. I can't see my husband unless he consents each time. He hasn't. He talks to them now. Not me. Not the person who has been managing every appointment, every medication list, every insurance call, every form, and every piece of paperwork he needed for 3 years. They waltzed back into his life for 5 minutes, and suddenly I am the villain. I have never felt so humiliated. Everyone keeps acting like I planned this, like I sat here scheming. No, I made one decision. One. And yes, maybe it was emotional. Maybe I acted out of exhaustion and loyalty to my son. But I did not act out of cruelty. I have been drowning for months. My husband wasn't here. My son was falling apart. I was alone. And now I'm the evil one. People are saying I stole from a vulnerable person. People are saying I isolated him. People are saying I wanted control. No. I wanted stability. I wanted peace. I wanted my son to not feel worthless. I wanted to survive. And now I am the one losing everything. My husband doesn't want to talk to me. His family wants to remove me completely. The bank account is frozen. The bills are stacking. My son is terrified I'll get arrested. I barely sleep. I barely eat. I feel like I'm walking around inside my own punishment for trying to care. And I still don't understand how I'm the villain here. I spent years doing everything. And the moment I acted for myself, for my child, I'm suddenly some manipulative monster. No one gives a damn about everything I've held together. No one cares about the emotional labor, or the exhaustion, or the fear. Everyone just wants to point and call me names, because that's easier than acknowledging how complicated this situation is. But sure, go ahead. Keep calling me a thief. Keep saying I used him. Keep pretending I'm some heartless strategist. At least I protect the people I love. Believe what you want. I know why I did what I did. Comments. Comment 1. Your son is manipulating the hell out of you, and you don't even see it. This update. It sounds like the unraveling of someone who's been lied to by everyone, including herself. Your son knows exactly what he's doing. He plays helpless, then lets you take the hits. And what's he doing while you're in legal hell? Crying. That's his move. Cry, collapse, avoid responsibility. Meanwhile, you're burning bridges, alienating your husband's entire family, and risking legal action, all while he sits on his arse trying to avoid mopping a floor. You act like his life is trauma-filled because he has to work a part-time job in college. Boo effing who? Lots of us worked 2 jobs in college and didn't sob to our mums like it was war trauma. He's not being destroyed by labor, he's addicted to comfort. You didn't ruin your marriage to help your son. You did it because you refused to accept that he's not fragile, he's just lazy. That's on you. Stop blaming the world for reacting exactly the way it should when someone abuses trust and power. Comment 2. POA is about protecting your husband's interests, not rearranging his life to suit your own guilt-ridden parenting. You sold his car without telling him, lied to the hospital about visitors, and froze out his entire support system, all under the guise of privacy and peace. You didn't just manage his life, you made executive decisions on his identity. You dictated who he could talk to, who could see him, and how he'd recover. You didn't act like someone trusted with authority. You acted like someone afraid of what others might hear if they got close to him. And let's be honest, if he was too sick to drive, too out of it to need a car, he was too sick for you to be making irreversible financial decisions that only benefited your son. You never even tried to ask him. That says everything. You were given power to protect. You used it to isolate. That's abuse of trust. Update. I'm back, even though I swore I wouldn't be. I told myself I'd ignore the comments, block out the noise, and just focus on what mattered, keeping my life together. But I can't. Things have gotten so much worse since I last posted, and honestly, I don't even recognize what my life is anymore. It started slowly, but I felt the shift. People in my own community, people I've known for years, started treating me differently. I'd show up to the store, and someone I used to chat with at church would pretend not to see me. I overheard 2 women whispering about what's happening with her husband, and one of them flat out said, "I heard she sold his car behind his back." People don't need full details to pass judgment. They just need rumors. But that was nothing compared to what happened next. There was a hearing to review the power of attorney. My husband's sister and daughter came in armed with a lawyer and a pile of paperwork. I thought I'd have a chance to explain everything, how I've handled all the finances for years, how I've been the one dealing with insurance, scheduling his treatments, and keeping the house running. I walked into that room thinking at least my husband would back me up, or, at the very least, understand. He didn't even look at me. They laid everything out: the sale of the car, the restricted visitation, the money I sent to my son. They painted it all like some sinister plot, like I was isolating him and funneling funds to my son on purpose, like I was exploiting a sick man. I tried to speak. I told them I did what I thought was best at the time. But they were all looking at me like I was already convicted of something. The court suspended my POA. It's not permanent, yet it's pending a full review. But in the meantime, I can't make any decisions for my husband, medical or financial. I no longer have access to our joint accounts. Everything is frozen. Then his sister took over his care. Literally. She's now listed as the primary contact. She moved him to a different facility closer to her. I found out through an automated message. When I tried to visit on the next allowed day, they told me I needed his permission. He declined. He doesn't want to see me. I stood there with a bag of clean clothes and a book he'd once asked for, and I had to hand it over to the front desk like a stranger. And all of this is unraveling just as my son, the only person I thought I was holding up through this, starts spiraling too. He failed 2 of his classes. After all that money and all that pressure to focus, now that he wasn't working, he flunked. I asked him what happened, and he just broke down again. He said everything was too much: the pressure, the fear, people calling him spoiled. He begged me for help, saying he needs another semester to get things right. I told him the truth. I don't have the money. I don't have access to the account. I'm falling behind on the utility bills. I said we're out of options. He looked me dead in the eye and asked, "Can't you just sell something else?" Like it was nothing. Like that's what I do now, sell pieces of our life to keep him from facing anything uncomfortable. I snapped. I told him there's nothing left to sell. That I've done everything for him. That I've put my marriage, my future, and now my legal standing on the line. He told me I was abandoning him like everyone else, then blocked me. And as if that wasn't enough, 2 days later I had someone from Adult Protective Services at my door. Anonymous report. I don't even have to guess who sent it. They asked questions about money, medical care, control, and access. I let them in. I have nothing to hide. But that doesn't matter. The investigation is now open, and I'm stuck in limbo until they close it. I don't know what happens next. My marriage is in ruins. My son is gone. My finances are locked up. My name is being whispered like I'm some cautionary tale. And I honestly don't even know what I'd do differently. I made one decision: to help my son when he needed me. I didn't do it for profit. I didn't do it to be cruel. I did it because no one else was showing up for him, and I couldn't stand by while he collapsed under the pressure. Maybe it was selfish. Maybe I should have asked. Maybe I was wrong. But I know this. I'm not evil. I'm not abusive. I was just a mother trying to survive a house full of broken pieces. I never expected that by choosing my son, I'd end up losing everything else. Comments. Comment 1. You weren't making sacrifices for your son. You were making them because your son refuses to do hard things. He didn't want to work a food service job. He failed 2 classes after you paid his way. That's not emotional stress, that's entitlement in action. The second he realized you had nothing else to give, he bailed. And now you're surprised. You burned your marriage to protect a kid who doesn't respect you enough to even stick around when things get hard. And don't even get me started on the POA stuff. You straight up abused it. You sold property, blocked family, made medical calls, and lied to staff. No amount of emotional burnout justifies that. You turned a legal responsibility into personal control, and now that it's gone, you're calling it betrayal. Come on. This was a slow-motion car crash, and you were behind the wheel the whole time. Comment 2. You keep saying you held everything together, but you only ever mention your son's well-being. Where in this story did you ever actually advocate for your husband, aside from handling his paperwork? You blocked his sister, lied to staff, made medical decisions without him, and spent money he didn't approve. You treated PO like ownership, but it was trust, and you broke it. His sister and daughter may have come in aggressively, but let's be real, they had to. You boxed everyone else out and only backed down when the court forced your hand. They're not vultures. They're people who realized you weren't prioritizing the man actually suffering in that bed. Your son is 19. Your husband is critically ill. You chose the former and abandoned the latter, and the people who love him noticed. This fallout isn't karma. It's consequences. Second story. My husband is convinced my hair will cause harm to our daughter. I already chopped it from my butt to my shoulder, but he still won't stop telling me to be careful with it around our daughter. I'm at a loss. My husband is very protective of our daughter, which is great because she's only 4 months old and needs a lot of protection. But he is definitely a helicopter parent in the making. His current fixation is my hair. I have very fine hair. Before giving birth, it was down to my butt. But when our daughter was about 3 weeks old, I got it cut to just below my shoulders for convenience. For some reason, it falls out a lot. I think because it's so fine. It's not a medical thing and not a postpartum thing because it's been like this for a long time. As far as I know, I can't do anything about it short of shaving my head. Any suggestions are welcome. My husband is convinced that our baby will get some hair in her mouth and into her body. Then she will need surgery to remove it, or it will kill her. Every day he tells me to watch my hair around the baby. Every time I pick her up, he tells me to be careful with my hair. Every time I make her food, every time he sees a hair on my shirt, every time he finds a hair of mine, he complains. And when I say every time, I mean every time. Multiple times a day for 4 months. And it's not like I'm walking around dangling it in her face. It's tied back, or at least slung behind my shoulder. He is also sure I'm going to bang her head on a door frame when I'm holding her and walking, so frequently tells me to be careful about that as well. But the hair thing is by far the most common and most annoying. I've told him I get it, I'm being careful, and to quit reminding me. He says that when it comes to the safety of our daughter, he will tell me every second of every day to keep her safe. I've tried telling him to quit. I've tried pointing out more broadly that we can't protect her from everything forever. We're just stuck in this endless loop of him getting frustrated about my hair and me getting frustrated about him telling me about it. We've had numerous arguments over this, and I just don't know where to go from here. Top comments. Commenter 1. There's a reason why new mothers all walk about with shaved heads. Oh wait, they don't. His obsession is beyond normal parental concern. I agree with other people in the thread. Speak to a doctor. Otherwise, as the baby gets more mobile and then goes to school, yada yada, this is going to get worse. Before you know it, he won't let the baby ride a bike or go on school trips because they are too dangerous. Commenter 2. Talk to your doctor. It sounds like he is having a hard time coping, and it's turning into anxiety. And in turn, he is going to drive you nuts. Get your doctor's perspective on all of this. Because the reality is that babies are built for first-time parents. Most people have hair, and you have already told him, and he doesn't want to hear it from you. So, ask if you can talk to her doctor about it. About the true risks. If he doesn't want to, then you know it's his method of controlling anxiety. But really, why wouldn't he want to go? You'd be agreeing to find out how to keep the baby as safe as he wants. Best case, he is wrong, and the baby is safe. Worst case, you are wrong, and someone with authority tells you so. And then the baby becomes safer. But I expect you'll be told you're fine. Commenter 3. It is normal to lose 100 hairs a day. I am a stylist and have hundreds of clients. No one has ever killed their baby. Lol. I am sorry your husband has become unreasonably obsessed. Tell him to ask his hairdresser and maybe talk to the pediatrician. His anxiety transfer to the baby is more dangerous. IMO. Update. My post got removed due to hitting the limits, but I wanted to provide a brief update because things definitely didn't go the way I expected. But it did all work out for the best. My husband saw the post. He opened up the laptop to do something. He wasn't spying or anything. It's technically my laptop. But it's the only one in the house, so we frequently share it. The post was left open on the screen. At first I thought he didn't see it because he didn't say anything. Then the next morning all hell broke loose. He was pretty angry, saying that internet strangers do not care about our baby. So why would their advice be relevant? For the rest of the day, when I asked him a question, he said, "Go and ask your internet friends." After he calmed down, I did apologize for hurting his feelings, but emphasized that I was also upset by his unreasonable behavior. It took a day or so, but we're back to normal now. With one difference. He has finally stopped obsessing over my hair. I don't know if it was reading the comments on my previous post or just realizing I was so desperate about the situation. But he has finally stopped mentioning it all the time. I think he's done it maybe once or twice in the last couple of days. I can live with that. So yeah, for a second I thought everything was going to SHT. But maybe seeing the post was the best thing for him in the long run. I haven't yet approached the idea of him seeing a professional about potential PPA. It's difficult right now with a pandemic, and I'm unsure how accepting of the idea he will be. I do plan to broach the issue with him, but I want to wait for the right moment to do so. So yeah, thank you all for the advice you gave. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. Wow, I read that thing, and it really seems that he might have a serious mental disorder. He is scared of absolutely made-up absurd things. What is PPA, though? I could not find what it stands for. OP. Yeah, I mean postpartum anxiety, but just anxiety in general would also make sense. I actually have diagnosed PPD and PPA stemming from previous mental health issues I had before I got pregnant. So I'm generally pretty aware of mental health and potential issues. I am concerned he has anxiety surrounding our kid, but he's not at a stage where I am seriously worried about his state of mind. He's not having panic attacks or engaging in dangerous behaviors, and our relationship still involves a lot of healthy communication. He still has contact with his friends and family and still eats and sleeps healthily. I am keeping an eye on his anxiety and do plan on bringing it up. But it's a sensitive issue partly due to culture. He doesn't come from a country which has great mental health support, so I want to plan how I approach it well. Commenter 2. I know you're looking at this as a win. But is it really? In the end, he got angry and was very immature. Go ask your internet friends. When you tried to get third-party help, you apologized to him, and he never apologized back. OP. I would view it as a win because I know my husband and our relationship well. I don't expect us to never get angry at each other, and I don't even expect us to never yell, although we both try and avoid yelling. On the rare occasions we get into bad fights, we have yelled. Sometimes we get angry, like everyone, and we lash out. That's not to say we fight all the time or anything, but I think it's unrealistic to expect that you will never fight with a partner. The important thing for me is coming back together after the fight and discussing, apologizing where necessary and moving on. We appreciate the issue often isn't solved through one conversation, but we commit to approaching it calmly in the future. Which is why I plan to still approach him about his anxiety, but I'm going to choose a time and place where the conversation will be productive instead of defensive. OP responds to a comment regarding overprotective fathers being obsessive over their daughters' decisions and lifestyles. OP. I would never let him do that, and I'm sorry that you were treated that way. I was very lucky in being given the right balance of independence and protection growing up, and I have been very self-sufficient from a young age. I don't know about your dad's upbringing, but a lot of my husband's issues stem from having the opposite experience growing up. He had one parent dead, the other working 3 jobs, living with his grandparents, pretty much ignored by his much older aunts and uncles. He never had someone to protect him, and he wants to give our daughter that advantage he never had, but obviously he's going in the wrong direction. Commenter 3. Do you do ponytails at all? Or a loose bun? Or hairband? That could be a good compromise, maybe. OP. I do tie my hair back as much as possible, but it doesn't really do my hair much good. Honestly, I'm SHT at hair care and that stuff, so it would probably be better if I invested more into it, which I very well might do. OP on her husband having emotions and being verbally abusive. OP. He didn't scream at me. I realize saying all hell broke loose might not have been the best phrase, but he is not a screamer and has never screamed at me. Do you mean psychotic or psychiatric? Because they are two very, very different things, and my husband has definitely not shown any signs of being psychotic. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it with your friends.